Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're going to talk about Sony A6700. So let's dive deep into it. So what is this puppy? This puppy is basically somebody went inside FX30 and removed its soul and dumped it into a 6600 body. That's all there is to it. And they added some extra love of AI processing unit. Now you have to understand this point. At this point, we are in a position where we can say we got the stills, we got the video, we even got the autofocus. So question becomes, what else could you add? So only thing Sony can think of is adding intelligence, basically this chip. Now why do you need a dedicated chip for that? It's basically running neural network extracts, so to say. That mathematics requires a dedicated hardware so it can run efficiently. So they have a dedicated hardware. What does this do? Well, right now, as you know, we have what we call eye autofocus. So how does eye autofocus work? Basically it tries to guess where your eye is and focuses on that. So this does another one step better of that. Basically it not only guesses where your eyes are, it guesses your whole structure, as in like your whole skeleton, basically estimate of it. Now benefit of that is that if you move, rotate, spin, jump, whatever else you want to do, it always retains where you're supposed to be. Meaning if you are jumping and your eyes is out of focus, it will still know where your frame is, so it can predict where your face will land, and then it can give you much higher fidelity of autofocus when you are doing something odd like dancing, action, these sort of sports, these sort of thing where you need like full frame tracking, this full human frame tracking, then it really shines. Now is that exponentially better? Not really. And that's not to say this is bad, it's simply because it's like we have reached that 95 percentile. So from 95 percentile to 99 percentile does not make whoa difference. It's like, you know, but it's a good add-on. Now it's a low-cost device. Now what is this so-called cost? It's in pounds supposed to be 1450 pounds. In dollars it's supposed to be $1400. In terms of euros it's supposed to be 1700 euros. God damn. In case of India, it's not launched yet, not announced yet, so I cannot specify. Now be mindful, it's not available anywhere. You have to wait for August and September kind of time zone. So it's supposed to be 1,15,000 rupees minimum, because again that's a minimum guesstimate that I can come up with. It has flip out screen, so they have learned they do not have like toy, they have like proper flip out. That's good. And they have FZ100 cell batteries. Now this is the one of the good thing about Sony have figured out like all of their full frame has this one battery. Done, take it, go home. This has exponential benefit not only in terms of stocking, meaning you can go to any Sony shop and there is 100% chance they will have this battery. And this also means if you are running a film crew, and let's say especially for wedding, they could easily have like 4 or 5 photographers, and each of them have different basically Sony camera. Let's say some has R series, some has A7S3, some has this or whatever have you. You will still find all the batteries are intercompatible, meaning you just charge the battery and use it however you want to. That's really good, not only for the environment but also for the customer. And it also keeps Z100 batteries like, you know, actually useful. So meaning if you upgrade your camera, you do not have to heat your battery. So it's a really good thing. Now it also supports lossless compressed RAW. Now you have to understand, whenever you take photos out of your camera, and if it's in JPEG or HIF, that's a converted file. Basically RAW file means there has not been done any conversion. So whenever you are viewing RAW file, it's being converted on the fly. So RAW simply means it gives you the black and white data. Now you're like, wait a minute, black and white? Yes, there has to be a processing done based on the physical locations of the pixel, based on the bare filter. There is a filter there. So these two data has to be calculated. Now raw file gives you the whole data, so your computer does the crunching. Is there a benefit to that? Yes, in terms of latitude, all the data is stored there, so you can recover a lot more of it. JPEG is fundamentally compressed. HIF bit more lavish in terms of bit depth, but raw simply means this is what the sensor caught, go YOLO on it. But consequence, files are bonkers. So can we compress it? Yes, we have lossless compression. Now be mindful, there is compressed option and there is a lossless compression. Lossless compression comes with a consequence that it requires CPUs to be very powerful, so to say. In terms of teraflop, this puppy requires a lot of crunching. You can do lossless compression of most things, but yeah, it's intensive. So that's why lossless compression is not a common feature. Compressed RAW, common feature. Lossless compressed RAW, that's very expensive. So having something this high magnitude in something like this, that's significant. That basically simply means Sony's Bionics XR dual series CPUs can actually handle it. Now this also gives you 10-bit first time for APS-C 6000 series camera, and it supports 4:2 as in color resolution and 4:0 if you want to be like bit light on the file size. Really good. What does this mean? This simply means if you are buying this camera and you're shooting a video out of it, you will not reach a point where it's like, you know what, if it had bit of this or that, no, you won't need that. You're like, it's 10-bit only, yes, but for more than enough people, 10-bit is more than good enough. Be mindful, you buy 4K HD hard DVD, that's also 10-bit only. So 10-bit is more than good enough for common use. Of course, for cinema, we try to go as high as possible. Cinema can easily be 12-bit or 14 bits or even 16-bit. But 10-bit is more than good enough for most of enough scenario. 8 is not, 10 is more than good enough, 12 is like, now you are living lavishly. So 10 is good. Now it has 11 FPS burst. Now this burst itself is not that amazing if you look into electronic shutter. However, because this is not a global shutter and a normal rolling shutter, it does come with the consequence of basically rolling shutter. So you need mechanical shutter to compensate for that. Now having a mechanical shutter that goes this far, that's good, because you can find many cameras from Panasonic or Fuji where you have like 5 FPS mechanical but 30 in terms of electronic. Now is that 30 useful? In some scenarios, absolutely. But if you are dealing with, let's say, golf, you have a thin long stick that is going yee, that instead of stick going like this, it will go whee. It literally looks weird when you look into the consequence of mechanical shutter. That's why having a consequence of electronic shutter. So you need a mechanical shutter. Having a physical mechanical shutter that can go 11 FPS at this sort of price, it's not bad. Not bad. So this is A6700. So let's look into what's the performance of it. Now, core performance improvement, basically where you will be like, no, this is exponentially better, is basically the rolling shutter. So to give you a mathematical context of it, 6600 as in previous generation King was 40 millisecond, meaning it was bad. Meaning if you take a still post and pan your camera, it will literally go like this. 40 millisecond is just bad. So 6700 improves that to 15 millisecond. The moment you cross 10 millisecond, basically you drop sub 10 millisecond, you are reaching cinema level. Like if you ever wondered how the heck RE Alexas and Red Cinema Camera, they really worked on that. That number is really low with them. And if you compare it to, let's say, Fuji gives you XS20 series, gets you around 20 milliseconds. So it's a really good system. Like your rolling shutter performance can reach a point where unless you are going whoa Michael Bay into it, you should be like good enough. It should get you back. Autofocus, it's one of the best in the market, like flat out. At this point in time, doubting Sony's autofocus is like just wasteful, because I specified without the AI chip, they are at 95 percentile. Now they are at like 98 percentile. So it's like more than good enough. And if you are having issues, there could be two things. You could have a defective rotor or you're doing something wrong. Other than that, niche cases will always happen, no matter which camera you buy, be it Canon, be it Nikon, be it Sony. But most of the time, the autofocus will be like, I got you. And be mindful, because of that recognition, the structural recognition, it can support animal, birds, insect, car, trains, because of that AI chip. AI chips not only analyzes or the core focus point, it studies the whole thing. Then it has a much better idea. So autofocus, especially at burst, it's really exponentially good. So you do not have to worry about autofocus. That's the gist of it. Much better and newer user interface. Now the primary reason why camera industry died is simply because nobody in camera industry, and I mean from the early days of DSLR, figured out that we have crossed 1990s. Like, I'm not joking. Like, all the cameras interface, you look at it, like look at the camera interface in 2010, look at the mobile interface in 2010, look at mobile interface in 2020, look at more cameras interface in 2020. It's like, are you serious? Like, you are literally stuck in basically 1990s. Like, Sony's biggest thing is now we have touchscreen. I'm like, whoa, you figured out that if you give touchscreen, you should give the ability to actually use the damn thing. So Sony went from ultra horrible to less horrible. So I have to praise it now. So it's much better. It's much better compared to their old horrible system to less horrible system. It can do 4K 60 without crop. Now that for many people is like, shut up, take money, give me this camera. And if you want to do continuous, basically 120 FPS 4K, it can give you 1.58x crop. To give you a context of that crop, that is like going from APS-C sensor to micro four third. So that's how you visualize it. Basically, what does that 1.58x means? That's basically micro four third. So can you do 120 FPS? Yes. Is it good as in terms of video resolution? Yes, actually quite good. But do understand, it will overheat and it does have basically that crop. So use it wisely. Basically know what you're getting into before you just jump into it. 4K 60, go YOLO on it, but deal with overheating. Now it does have extra dial. as in you have a dial here and a dial here. Now, does that matter? Yes. That's the biggest difference between a cheap ass camera and an expensive camera. If you look at any expensive camera that is like pro and top of the line, it has way too many buttons and dials. Now, like, who would use that? No, you will use that. Muscle memory is always faster than anything that is non-tactile. Touchscreen are non-tactile. It does not tell you what you are doing. When you have a tactile system, you can just look into your viewfinder and you're just like, tick, 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 I'm changing the shutter, I'm changing the aperture, or ISO. You can set it up to whatever you need to. So having physical tactile things for it is just shut up, take money. So having that on such a low end camera, that's actually a good thing. And it also has basically interactive the MI shoot that Sony has, so you can plug in microphones, wireless receivers, things of that nature without requiring extra wire cables and all that jazz. It does have good IBIS. Now be mindful, IBIS of Sony is not the greatest. Like their autofocus, you can close your eyes and trust it. IBIS really is like, IBIS is not amazing, but like not bad. Let's just put it that way, it's not bad. Now it does have single card slot. Be mindful. There are two types of people. One who has lost their data, another who is going to lose their data. There is no third kind. It's just that you're gonna lose your data or you have already lost it. So for many people especially who deal with things that it cannot be redone, there is no retake, they will not risk single card slot if they can afford better system. If they cannot afford it, that's a different thing. But if they can afford it, they will never buy a system that has like single card slot. And then it has micro HDMI. I'm genuinely angry because Sony so far has doing quite well, and they started this trend of actually giving you full size HDMI. That does matter, not only from environmental point of view, but to actual usability, because these things break if you look at it wrong. You look at it hardly, it's like breaks apart. So that's really frustrating. It does have low resolution screen. Now you may be like very confused whenever people talk about camera. It's like they talk about million dots. It's like, what does that mean? Well, you have to understand, pixel means one unit of electrical system that renders all colors. Basically, if the screen can render color, what is the biggest unit that I have to smallest unit I can look into and still get any color I want? Now you go inside a pixel, you get into what we call subpixel. Now those subpixels are what we classify as dot. So for example, this is a 4K panel, as in it has 4K pixels. I zoom in, now I have 4K multiplied by 3. Now where the heck that multiplied by 3 happened? 3 is basically the red, blue, green. That dots are red, blue, green. So whenever, that's why these dots give you such a large number. It's a really horrible resolution, and again it's fault of basically all our reviewers, including me, that we should never use that dot image. It's like, just what's the resolution? Now why? Because your mobile phone actually comes in resolution, so you will know this thing literally never crossed 2010. Not joking. And the tiny display is like 2 million dots. That's 720p. That's not even basically full HD in all sides. It's like 1024 and 720. It's like, what? That's why I said, like, they use dots because it's multiplied by 3 at minimum. Sometimes it can be multiplied by 5. It's like, what, 5? Well, some OLEDs specifically have blue pixel. Then on the two corners, they have 2 red and basically 2 green. So that gives a much bigger system. Or again, there are other designs also where you can have like 1 yellow also. But again, all those are subpixel. Pixel count does not change. Subpixel count, you can go YOLO on it. So they use that number to like, ooh, big number. But when you look at resolution, it's like, dude, your smartwatch has more resolution than that viewfinder. So now thankfully, at least they did figure it out that it has to be high refresh rate. So thankfully it's 120 FPS. So that's good. This, horrible. But be mindful, it's horrible in all camera companies. It will overheat in basically hot ambient, meaning India. So that's one of those things that you have to be aware of. There is a reason why FX30 has cooling fans. So for whom this camera was made? Basically, it's not cheap nor expensive. Now you may be like, wait a minute, I'm talking about this sort of price. How the heck it's not expensive? Well, if you think this is expensive, please look into the price of FX30 or A7S3 or like, you know, flagship lineups. Again, Sony only. Don't look into Canon or Nikon. Trust me, it is not expensive. However, it's not cheap because again, both camera companies gives you camera that are much cheaper than this. So it's neither cheap nor expensive. So what exactly it is basically targeting mid-range professionals. What is professional? Professional simply means anybody who's earning using their craft. If I'm a photographer and I'm clicking photos and I'm selling that photos and I'm making a living out of it, I am professional. It does not matter. It's like, oh, his talent is not professional. No. Am I making money? Yes, equals I am professional. Then you have enthusiasts, vloggers, things of that nature. So these are the two people who are like the most beneficial from this sort of camera. Now, what kind of horsepower this has? More than enough for video horsepower, meaning you'll not complain about it, and more than enough still chops where it's like, I got this. And thankfully, at least even though they have compromised on the HDMI, they did introduce one thing. It has USB 4K 30 FPS webcam functionality, meaning in the back generation of 2020, when they released camera, either because of chip shortage or because of stupidity, they had 4K 15 FPS only. It's like, what's the use of it? Even 24 FPS, it would make sense. It's like 15 FPS, what the hell? It was, I'm pretty sure it was because of chip shortage, but now all those modern Sony cameras that have been released after like last 1 year or so, they generally go up to 4K 30 FPS, including Canon cameras also. So that actually makes it useful, where you can just plug in, give a 4K video camera presence without requiring HDMI to capture card. So that is good. It does have also very good Sony lens ecosystem. Now this is a very critical aspect. Whenever you are talking about camera body, it does not mean anything. It does not mean anything unless you have an ecosystem to go around with. For example, I can say Sony has an interactive shoe mount. What's the use of it? Does Sony have anything that you would like to buy? Thankfully, yes, it does have multiple mics. Now these are 3 mics I'm showing. Go to their site, they have more than 10. There is one mic for everyone. So if you like that, then it's like, I'm actually able to use that. Now this is a niche, because again, I would love a Rode Wireless Go to have an adapter for this. Then it will be like, shut up, take money, but we are not there yet. But other aspect is where it matters the most is the lens selection. Now, does Sony have lens selection? Yes. And I'm talking about just APS-C lens. You can put full frame lens into this, but it would be unwise. Basically, why carry around the glass that you are not using? Unwise. So do they have like APS-C lenses? Yes, thankfully, because Sony has like 8-year head start compared to all other competitors, Nikon and Canon, they always had like a very good selection of APS-C lenses, which they have refreshed, as in like Mark II, Mark III lenses are out there. So they have really high quality and quite attractive lenses for very diverse kind of price ranges. Like this is the most expensive one they have. This is like a video lens. It has zero focus breathing. Like the lens itself has zero focus breathing, and it has motorized zoom in and zoom out. So like if you want a video shooting, where it's like I'm using this APS-C, I want a video grade shooting, this is damn good. And because again Sony is so popular, a third party, and they have already worked with third parties like Tamron, they are in partnership with Tamron. So Tamron also has a lot of lens that is just APS-C only, and then Sigma also has APS-C only. So you are settled, you got this. Like if you want to buy into this camera, please look into the lenses, please figure out which price bracket that you are happy with, which lenses, camera brand lens you want to have. And there are also other options like Voigtlander and all that jazz, but again they are not as widely popular as people might think. So 3 options, Sony, Tamron and Sigma, takes care of the most of the situation. So it's a really healthy ecosystem, and I really love the fact that they have one battery, meaning there is actually top quality third-party battery. I do not like third-party batteries, but again they have top quality because there's one body that they are building, one battery, and it's going to sell to hundreds of people. So they are actually putting the effort into and making it a top quality battery. One battery is there that has USB-C charging built into it. You pull out the battery, plug the USB cable. So it's really good in terms of ecosystem. So what about the competition? Now, I'm talking about from an Indian market point of view. Let that be very clear, because in India things does escalate in price. So you may find it odd why I'm comparing it to this, but in India, this puppy is getting very close to EOS R8, meaning this full frame puppy. Now, do you need full frame puppy? Well, if you are in a scenario where you are actually getting paid for background blur, like when people get paid for that, actually yes. Why do you think so? Basically, iPhone, Samsung, OnePlus, Nothing, all these brands, they focus so much on background blur, like subject selection and background blur. That's the whole point. That's the easiest way to differentiate from cheap camera to GG camera. So how is the easiest way to get a like GG background separation? Have a GG sensor. So what is a GG sensor? Large sensor. The bigger the better. So basically, if you put a f2.8 lens on this puppy, you will get f2.8. You put a f2.8 lens into a APS-C, no. And in this, like especially in Canon, assuming you can afford the lenses, they really go bright aperture. Meaning if you are in a position, let's say Indian weddings, there are a lot of people there. So if you really want to focus on something and want to remove other people, you cannot just go, hey, can you relieve? No. Again, they have time for that, but if festival is happening, yeah, you don't get to do that. But in that time, you'll be like, shut up, take money, give me a lens that can isolate all of these people. And that point, you'll be like, dude, these lenses are awesome. At that point, the full frame will matter to you a lot. And please do not go there where it's like, no, f2.8 in APS-C means the same. No, it does not. No, it does not. If that were to be true, we would not have speed boosters. So flat out, if it matters to you, this may be a better solution. So you have to be mindful of that. And what about the performance or other aspects? It's quite similar. Other than iBus, it has almost everything. And yes, it does have one con, that the battery is smaller, but you can buy a few of those. It's manageable, but you won't be like, oh, I bought Canon. It's like, okay, Canon. Like Sony also has some issues. This also has some issues, but it's like more or less balanced. But it does have full frame. So if you put f1.8 lens or f1.2 on this puppy, yeah, it's gonna poof, Canon out of basically Sony out of the water. So that's one of those things. Now, be very mindful. Please select the lens before you select camera body. It does not matter whether it's a Sony or Canon. Please select the lens. This is the lens I'm gonna buy. Or are you buying with kit body? Are you expecting to increase lens selections? Think about those. Like really chew down to the bones about that. It's like, think about it. Like, what exactly I'm gonna buy? Can I afford it? Because be mindful. Having options is awesome, but it's like, oh, all options include basically Bugatti Veyron and like, you know, Rolls Royce and Ferrari. That's not an option. So it's one of those things. Be mindful of that. Select the lens, because that's the expensive part. Camera body is chump change. Look into the lens first. And for Indian audience, I would really urge you to wait till August and September and be mindful. That's a perfect timing because this will be reaching into winter, so we're not gonna have very high thermal testing, but it does overheat, and it overheats at around 4K 50 FPS and around 1 hour recording if you're lucky in indoor. So it does overheat, and in Indian case, if you're doing outdoor shooting, you may not want to trust into that. I would urge you to look into FX30 because it does have cooling fan and does have dual recording also, as in like dual card slot. So be mindful of that. Do not just jump into it and it's like, hey, I'm doing daylight shooting and it's like, you know, all my time camera is overheating. Yeah, it will overheat. Only Sony camera that does not overheat without basically cooling fan, that is FX3. Not FX3, A7S3. Somehow that has magic, but again, it has 12 megapixel. So be mindful of it, basically. Just be aware and be mindful. So this was my presentation on Sony a6700. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it with your friend. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.